Alright, so I'm going to show you the live setup I put together for my band. Essentially, it's a scaled down version of the modern setups you'll see bands use today that play large venues. We set up a Mac Pro tower, and I'm going to get that integrated into the rack itself. That way setup and teardown is even faster. The audio interfaces we use are two RME multi-phase 2s and a Digimax FS mic preamp by PreSonus. That is connected via light pipe into the master RME multi-phase 2. In the rear of the computer, you can see the two installed HDSP cards where the audio interface connects. The primary reason I decided to go with this setup is stability, which is essential when setting up like this for a live show. In the back of the rack, you can see where all the gear connects. To someone who isn't familiar with pro audio, this may look like a really highly complicated mess, but it's actually a pretty basic setup. So if we move in a bit closer, I can show you some of the hardware. These two units here, these are the backs of the two RME multi-phase 2s. This is where everything gets plugged in and then routed into Logic Pro, then comes out into a house mixing board or our own PA system. Below this is the Digimax. I'm going to try and show you that in a minute. Above the audio interface is the vocal effects processor. On top of that is my guitar wireless, which plugs directly into my guitar processor. Above that is the wireless microphone for the main vocal. Then under the two RME multi-phase 2s is the Digimax FS. These four units here are the wireless personal in-ear monitor systems. Below that's the antenna combiner for those systems. And then on the very bottom is the power conditioner where everything plugs in. As you may have already figured out, we have no live amps on stage. Instead, all our live instruments are run directly into Logic Pro 10, including drums. The drum kit we use is a Roland TD30kV electronic kit which plugs directly into Logic. The kit isn't currently in the studio, however, I will be posting a few videos of us playing live so you can see the kit as well as everything else we are running in action. So because this kit and the rest of our instruments run directly into Logic, the only mics we have to set up on stage are for vocals. Setting up this way allows us to get a really tight mix of the band directly out to a PA system with no stage amplifier or acoustic drum bleed. Of course, with this type of setup, each band member has to have a personal monitor system so we can hear ourselves, as well as one another, while performing. Basically what I've done here is set up a track for each live instrument and mic we use, and program the songs we play in the order we want for each set. So all we need to do is place the scroll bar at the start of the first song, press play, and we're off. I can adjust the amount of time we need between songs simply by adjusting the tempo track in Logic accordingly. If we happen to need more time at a certain point while performing, I set up several ways on stage to stop and start playback in Logic on the fly. As we make our way through the video, you'll see how we do that. Our drummer plays each song to a click track, so any automated effects fire off at the exact times they are supposed to. Every band member has a personal in-ear monitor system, so I set up tracks for each one of those. There are a couple playback tracks. Our light show is all pre-programmed and automated. And we have tracks that are set up to send MIDI patch changes to our guitar and vocal effects processors. This eliminates the need to constantly be next to a foot controller on stage to manually change the sounds. The foot controller I do have set up on stage is just a USB MIDI controller that I programmed to perform three functions in Logic. Start and stop the set. This one I set up to mute the vocal mics just in case there was some sort of a feedback issue while performing, but I've never had to use this one yet. And this one I just programmed to mute my guitar signal. The main vocal runs through an Audio-Technica wireless microphone system which connects directly into the TC Helicon vocal effects processor. This processor has a stereo output which connects directly into Logic Pro to produce stereo vocal effects. As with the Line 6, Logic sends MIDI signals to the TC Helicon to automate effects and change the sound patches. For the vocal track in Logic, I programmed some delay automation effects to complement the TC Helicon vocal effects processor. I also added some additional EQ to boost certain frequencies and eliminate the harsh ones.
and added a couple of compressors to better control the dynamics of the vocal during a live performance.
The backing vocal mic we use is a Shure SM58. The line runs around the back of the stage and connects into the Digimax mic preamp.
I applied a very similar setup to the backing vocal track as I did with the main vocal, except I added some stereo reverb and a gate.
For guitars, I use a Line 6 Pod Pro. It's connected stereo directly into Logic, and it sounds really great live. Again, I don't have to worry about changing effects or sound patches with this because I set up Logic to automatically do that for me as we play through each song.
In Logic, the electric guitar track is pretty simple. Some panning and volume automation, EQ, and compression.
The guitar wireless system I use is the Line 6 Relay G90. It plugs directly into the Line 6 Pod Pro processor I use. A really nice feature with this wireless system is that it has a separate signal output jack for an external tuner in the back, so I can just run a separate cable out to my pedal tuner and it will not affect my primary guitar signal. I have 3 guitars I use on stage, and each one is usually set to a different tuning. So I have equipped each guitar with its own wireless transmitter, and I attached it right onto the guitar itself, so I don't have to wear a second body pack or unplug anything when I switch the guitars out. I just turn the transmitters on and off on each guitar. I also modified the guitar road cases a bit, so I can just leave these on all the time and plugged in and everything. So I just, they're ready to go from gig to gig. Just open the case, take it out, and turn it on. Over here are my other 2 guitars, and you can see how I mounted the transmitters on these. And again, it really makes for fast and easy change-outs between songs. Over here I have my acoustic, and the way that's hooked up, it plugs directly into the Digimax preamp.
The acoustic guitar track has automation programmed to mute and unmute the signal, so it only turns on when we need it during the set. I added an EQ to take out any unwanted frequencies. Also added some reverb and sample delay to create a nice space for the guitar in the mix, and a compressor as well.
Our bass guitarist also uses a Line 6 wireless system. He just mounts his transmitters on the backs of his guitars. The receiver is located at the front of the stage with the rest of his pedal rig. From there, the signal goes into the bass amp, where we keep the stage volume muted. Instead, we take a direct line out of the amp, right into Logic Pro.
The bass track, like the others, has some automated effects. Here I set up a digital pedal board in Logic with a distorted effect. Then I programmed some automation to turn the effect on and off. Again, added some EQ, and a compressor with a hard limiter to keep the volume nice and consistent throughout all the songs.
Another big reason we have this kind of setup is so everybody can have their own personal in-ear monitors. Each transmitter runs stereo into Logic, so everybody gets their own customizable stereo monitor mix. Everyone also has their own body pack receiver, and we also had custom in-ear pieces made by Sensophonics. This unit down here is the antenna combiner. This powers all 4 units and runs a cable out of the back of this to the antenna we have on stage. Typically we'll keep this behind the drummer or off to one of the sides of the stage. It's just set up on a mic stand. I actually equipped this stand with quick releases on the top and on the bottom here. That just makes setup and teardown faster. And that's it.
In Logic, I have a track set up for each band member. Each instrument track has 4 buses set up on it to send independent levels to each in-ear track. So that is how everyone gets their personal mix adjusted. Everyone is assigned a bus number. Also, in the in-ear tracks themselves, I've set up some cues for each member. Most of these cues are click tracks to keep time, Let's say, for example, a guitar intro to a song. That way, during a live show, the drummer doesn't have to keep time on the hi-hat or do any count-ins for songs where we all start together at the same time. Other cues we have programmed are voice cues that tell us what song is coming up next in the set. I personally have some voice cues programmed that remind me which guitar to switch to or which tuning I need for a certain song. You can really put anything you want in here and only that person is going to hear it. So for example, if the vocalist has an a cappella piece for a bridge or an intro and you want to make sure they hit the right pitch, we can program some piano keys that only they will hear. Everyone else just hears them singing the piece. In order to have more control over the mixes of the band, I set up buses off of the main instrument tracks in Logic. These buses are either routed out to the main 2-channel stereo output of the audio interface sending out the full mix of the band, or an 8-channel snake sending out each instrument track separately. This way we have the ability to separately adjust the entire mix of the band being sent out to the PA or mixing console without it affecting our personal in-ear monitor mixes. I set up 2 ways we can send out our sound. The first is the easiest. We just plug into the main left and right output of the audio interface and either run cables right into the house mixing console or directly into a powered PA system. That would send out the entire stereo mix of the band I did in Logic, and that's it. Typically we have to bring our own PA system to shows, so this is usually the way we'll do it. And because we run all of our instruments direct, including bass guitar and drums, the PA we bring needs to have subs. So typically we rent a 4-piece portable QSC system and it's always sounded really good. A second way we can send out our sound, I set up a snake that can be plugged directly into the stage box or house mixing console. This will still send out the same mix I set up in Logic, but the house will be able to adjust the level of each instrument if they wanted to. The only exception is the electronic drum kit, which runs 2-channel stereo out of this snake. So they would only be able to control the overall level of the kit using this setup. If the venue wanted the drum mix completely separated as well, the Roland drum kit has its own 8-channel independent output. That way we can send a second snake to the house mixing console with all the drums. However, that would bypass any adjustments I've made to the drum mix in Logic. Another important point I think worth mentioning is everyone's in-ear monitor mixes I set up in Logic would never be affected regardless of which way we send signal out of the drum kit. This is because the 2-channel stereo signal from the kit is always being sent into Logic Pro. So overall, with this kind of setup, the house soundman has a few options of how we can send him all of our signals. To control the lights during our sets, I programmed numerous lighting effects with a software plugin called DMXIS. The effects are changed via MIDI as we play through each song. I also set up some automation to control the brightness of the entire lighting rig. As I've mentioned before, I'm going to post another video of the band playing live. This way you can see the light show in action. So here's the hardware for the DMXIS software. It just plugs in to the computer via USB cable, and then you have a DMX cable out of the hardware. We have it running into the fog machine first, and the software controls the duration of how long the fogger is active and at what points in the set we want it to fire off. From here, it goes up into our first lighting rig, and I set up this rig so it's 2 pieces. The first piece is simply the tripod. The second piece is 2 poles that I clamp together, and the one pole goes into the tripod, and the second pole holds all of the lights and all of the cabling. So for setup and teardown, you just take this whole piece, place it into the tripod, and you plug the DMX from the fogger in, then DMX out into the lighting rig across on the other side of the stage. That's where the DMX line terminates, and then you just plug it in. One of the most important pieces of a setup like this is a really good power conditioner that can remove any noise that may be generated while using equipment like this in a live scenario. We double up on that by plugging everything we have into these Furman power conditioners. We have 8 of these we put around the stage and have them either dedicated to audio or lighting. This one, for example, is labeled for lighting.
So what we'll do is chain all the audio ones together and all the lighting ones together and run them each into their own separate circuit breakers. Aside from it just being a good common sense practice to do, we also mainly do this so the lighting won't contaminate the audio line with unwanted noise. In closing, I'd just like to walk you through the front of our stage. We have some boxes set up with lighting effects. There's our bass player's pedal rig, our singer's guitar and mic, I keep a stand on stage for my iPhone. This way I can control Logic Pro remotely right from the front of the stage. We also have an app for our set list, as well as an app where we can fire off some samples on the fly. We always have a lot of fun with that one. A couple fans. And that's about it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.